Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Robert with Knowmium, and welcome to another episode of Business Casual, where we talk to professional business people all around the world, especially virtually now, and ask them, what do they do? And let's learn some things that we may not have known about them and about the type of industry they're in. Today, I am very happy to be joined by J.R. Arce, who is an old friend of mine when I lived in South Korea. And we had a lot of wonderful in-person meetings. And now we are doing this virtually. So I don't know you as well as you know yourself. So JR, introduce yourself. Tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks, Robert. My name is JR. I am based out of the Washington, D.C. area and in the United States. I'm the CEO of a digital marketing agency called WazaMedia. We help businesses and individuals with the power of storytelling. So from marketing to communications support and strategy and consulting. So everyone has a story to tell, and we're here to help them tell their story.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned storytelling because hopefully we do hear at least one story from you today. But even, before the pandemic, reading about communication in business in general, not just virtual, but any communication, it's often said the most important skill you can have in communication is to listen well, listen attentively. But the second is weaving in storytelling and narratives into your business discussions. So that's an excellent way to start this off. JR, what would you like to tell us about your work and the business and industry you're in, especially things that we as business people around the world may not know about your type of work? And this is a wonderful time for storytelling, whether it was a success, whether it was a failure, whether it was humorous. What can you give us insight into?
So, wow. I'm going to start off with a story about how I got into the world of communications because with my parents, they really wanted me to go into the medical field. Growing up with a Filipino culture background, you usually come out as an engineer or something in the medical field. So my parents really pushed me into medicine. I ended up being a nurse. I worked as an emergency room nurse, dealing with trauma. If you were bleeding, you were incapacitated, I either brought you back to life or did work with a team to help in trauma situations. That was my life before I went into communications. And it wasn't, if it wasn't for dabbling into the visual arts, being trained as a headshot photographer by Peter Hurley out of New York City, love for social media, being a personal brand consultant, those things helped me with going into the world of communications as I am currently today. So one, I'll go into that background, but I'll also leave it with a note that whatever you do as your main job, you'll always have side hustles or side interests, and you never know when those side interests may present a career opportunity for you, just like it is for me today. So several years ago, about 6-7 years ago, I made the full transition from being an emergency room nurse to working in the field of communications. I have dealt in public relations for large organizations. I've dealt with marketing. And so with WazaMedia, I'm able to bring both the experience, not only in marketing, communications planning, in strategic planning, but I also have the unique background of working in the medical field, working in hospitals around the world and understanding it from a medical standpoint. So that's a little bit more about my background and a little bit of my career progression to how I am now.
Do you ever find yourself now dealing with in the world of communication, either consciously or subconsciously thinking back to your days in emergency rooms and thinking, how was communication happening between doctors, nurses, patients, and then seeing some of those similarities or differences into what you're doing now with a lot of digital communication?
So there, the one thing that I feel that I've been able to bring from the emergency room setting into the world of of marketing, but in small teams, when we're working codes, we worked in a closed loop communication circle. When a patient is in a code setting, they're not doing very well, and we work in a small team, usually about 5 to 6, 7 people, and we all have different roles that we have to play. And because it can be a stressful time, and time is of the essence to help bring someone back to life or stabilize, we have to be in good communication and we have to be in sync. And so some of the training that we've done in the emergency room is closed loop communication, where when we do something, we let somebody know, someone has a role to record it, to document it. And there's always 1 to 2 people that are giving out the instructions. So it is clear throughout the small team, number one, what you're doing, what are you doing, and has it been documented? And so I've been able to take that type of small group communication and apply it to the small teams that we do at WazaMedia and working with clients. Because if we don't know what we're all doing, our efforts are for nothing.
Absolutely. I know from my personal research into the field of communication, but especially in health communication, I studied that long ago, but I still try to keep up with different, I don't work in health communication now, but I like to keep up now and then with it. The role of empathy and communicating empathy, especially from a doctor who's diagnosing people every single hour, sometimes with life-threatening diseases. How can they still communicate as a human? And it takes training. They're the smartest person in the hospital, but being able to connect with those patients and not seem too cold. It's, for them, it's a routine. Sorry, I got cancer again. It's how can they really make that individual feel like they're still an individual and not just a number on a piece of paper. But sorry to take that tangent there, but I love reading about and studying, empathy for our clients, for our customers, for our team members. And I often go mentally back to doctor patient. If you can get a doctor to have empathy for somebody on that completely different, skill level, of industry level, then anybody could do it, right?
So I've worked with some doctors who have really good communication skills with their patients, and I have some that haven't, but that happens in every field. But the way that in the environment that I've worked in the medical field as a nurse is that the doctor sees many patients and usually has a limited amount of time, but they're the experts when it comes to diagnosing, and they're the ones who can officially diagnose a patient with what they have. And so after the doctor tells the patient what's going on, it's my job as the nurse to execute the treatment plan that the doctor has. So executing the treatment, giving the meds, facilitating the treatment, diagnostics for further testing. And then the last part is the further education. As the nurse, I help with the education on what the patient needs to do while they're in the hospital. And the goal is to get them home so that they can be able to take care of themselves. And that's where a lot of the empathy during that treatment period, where empathy definitely needs to be executed, and to make sure that I am catering not only to the physical needs of the patient, but also to the emotional needs of the patient, being there to listen, being able to provide resources, just even lending an ear could be enough to gain that rapport with a patient that just had heard some devastating news that they weren't expecting to hear when they're coming to the hospital. And it's a life-changing event. Their whole world is shattered by something that the doctor has told them that they weren't expecting. And now it's my job next is to facilitate the next steps. And it's really, there has to be a level of trust. There has to be a level of rapport so that I can work together with the patient to help them get to the next steps, which is hopefully get them up on their feet so that they can better take care of themselves.
Thank you for including that, because I know before this, we don't rehearse these, but we do kind of give you an idea of what we're going to talk about. And health communication was not one of them. So you're just proving your on-the-spot communication skills. But let's go back to what you're doing now with digital media, your role as a CEO. Is there any kind of incident or a story that might be interesting in the world of digital media. Is there something that you could share with us that you've lived through or that you've seen that might help other business people around the world?
Yes, we've at WazaMedia, we deal with several different industries, and from nonprofits to for-profits, everyone has a story to tell. So the first thing that I like to do with working with clients is just have a candid conversation about, kind of like similar to what we're doing right now, casually during business casual, about telling that story. Because on the surface level, we have a unique story, but then we need, after that story is told, we need to dive deeper in. We need to start getting granular, because when we're coming up with the communication plan for every company or every personal brand, there are certain elements that we want to emphasize the most. And by diving into the story, we're able to get key messages that stand out, because everyone is unique. Everyone has a unique story, but it's really the process of diving deep into the story that helps us find out what is unique and special to that person or to that company brand that makes them stick out. So it is a process. It is not something that you can cookie cut. It takes sometimes it takes a while depending on the client relationship. But that's where I feel like my nursing background can help with the situation and with maintaining client relations, especially when it comes down to the consulting and finding out at the granular level what makes them special and what makes them unique.
What do you say to clients or just people in your professional network who say, I don't have a story. I don't like storytelling, or storytelling doesn't really belong in business. Uh, do you get that? And if you do, how do you approach that?
The good thing is that some of the clients that I've had are fortunate that they all believe that they have a story to tell. And it's important because we're all humans, and humans have a form of connection through storytelling. I'm gonna do a huge throwback to how the cavemen were communicating. We know those history and those reports about how cavemen were trying to tell stories using pictures on the walls. So storytelling goes from a very, very far back, and it's ingrained to us in humans. We all are trying to communicate something, and we're using either pictures, we're using stories, oral, we're using in written form. In today's world, digital is the medium for telling our story. And so we are just evolving the way how storytelling is distributed. And for companies, sometimes they need to get their story distributed to the masses. So it's either a social media campaign, or if it's getting earned media attention through a tier 1 media agency, or if we have to go through, say, and I know we haven't done it yet, but hopefully one day would be nice, is to get something as large as getting a client up for a Super Bowl commercial, because that's, I understand it is one of the cheapest ways to get mass amounts of attention in a short amount of time.
Did you just say Super Bowl commercials are cheap?
In comparison, so in comparison to a long campaign versus where everyone's a large amount of people's attention is on the Super Bowl, and they're already captured. It's a captured audience. And so if you want to get your message out quickly and get attention, that is one of the best places there. And I keep thinking about the last Super Bowl where Reddit they paid for a 5-second ad. It was only 5 seconds, yet I saw the earned media off of it. Articles were asking, what did Reddit do? I see Twitter posted like, did anyone capture that 5-second ad that they did? Did anyone screenshot it? Did anyone record it? So it gathered a lot of attention, and people were talking about it afterwards. And so there's different ways and different strategies that a lot of the big PR firms do that are great. But my part that I enjoy the most is the experimentation part. There's different ways of how to get attention out there, and I'm willing to work with clients to be creative. because there's endless possibilities on what we can do.
Awesome. So the next question that I have is really focused on digital communication, virtual communication, like we're doing now. But in your personal experience and history, you were in health, you were in communication, but over the last year and a half, virtual, virtual, virtual. What tips or even warnings or lessons could you share with our larger audience about what you've learned in your industry by so many people being thrown into virtual?
The last year and a half has had me up my game when it comes to virtual. And the biggest things that I learned was, when in a virtual environment, what are we really doing? And I came to the conclusion, or the realization, that I am trying to emulate the best way I can how an in-person interaction normally goes. And so with that in mind, I've been learning how to upgrade my equipment, upgrade my software in my environment in a way that will do its best to emulate a physical interaction with someone. So it comes down to making sure I'm at an eye level, making sure I have good audio, making sure my lighting is great, the background is similar to either a work setting, the height of my camera. There's a lot of different things that go into trying to emulate this experience as if it's someone physically face to face. And so that is a big thing. And the other part is making sure that we're communicating on a way that is understandable, because the learning curve in the last year for getting onto these technologies has been kind of difficult for some. And so educating clients to making sure that they have they're able to leverage this type of equipment and this type of interaction for their small business or their large business. Because if I can help them do that with this interaction, they'll take that knowledge and apply it to other areas of life. And we can stop hearing the most common phrase in the last year, which is, "I think you're on mute."
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I can see even face-to-face meetings that, I've been fortunate in Hong Kong that there have been some face-to-face events recently. And as a joke, when we're meeting, we're reconnecting with clients we maybe haven't seen physically in a year and a half. As we're having conversation, it's fun to throw in face to face. "Oh, I think you're on mute." Like, what? Oh, it really throws people off because they're not quite used to being back face to face yet.
I'm gonna have to try that out at the next physical meeting, or with someone that I'll see next. I'm gonna try that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
You know what I just thought of? I haven't done this, but I think I'm going to. I'm going to face-to-face conversation. I'm just going to keep my mouth moving, but make myself silent and see what they say. They're like, "What has happened? Am I in the Twilight Zone here?" Well,
I like it.
JR, I'm calling you by your I know you by two names. It's hard habit to break. I have two names as well, Robert and Bob. So my apologies, JR. I've got one more main question, and you can of course bring up anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about. Feel free, speaking freely. But my last major question today is, who in the business world should contact you? Who could benefit from you and WazaMedia? And how would they get a hold of you, in addition to the links that we will put under this?
So WazaMedia is best for companies that are looking to scale their business. We work with small businesses and personal brands, but really the right clients that we're positioned to help are people who are looking to scale. People who understand that marketing is important, that marketing helps with your bottom line. And it really helps because the client relation understands and the interactions that we are here to help with a solution. you have a problem that you need to get your message out to as many people as possible to either to persuade them to do something, to bring awareness to something, or to build influence or brand. And so we are positioned to help those types of clients and those individuals to get them to the next level. We understand with the world of free education on YouTube and on Google that a lot of people have tried to experiment with it. And some people have come to a ceiling where it's either a knowledge gap or a skill gap. And I encourage people to try to do things on their own. But when you're at that point that you can't get up a little bit higher, or you're trying to blast off to the moon, talk to us, and you can reach us at waza.media on our website, or you can look at all of our socials at WazaMedia, and we will be happy to help you get to the next level and hopefully shoot to the moon.
That's awesome. And do you work with clients all around the world, or are you focused on specific regions?
We're based out in the Washington, D.C. area, which allows us for hopefully soon to get more in-person meetings. But we do have clients out in Asia that we work with. And so we are an international company.
Excellent. And that's the benefit of virtual, right?
Yes, definitely.
Well, JR, any final words before I do my closing? You had great final words, but I want to make sure we get anything you want to say in.
Thanks, Robert. The biggest thing is that I want to reemphasize that everyone has a story to tell. And if you're looking to start off your own personal brand or your company, the easiest place to start is starting with your story, and then start with a question and answer your own question, which is start with why. A very popular book by Simon Sinek. If you start with why, that is a huge way on how your audience can build a connection with you. And then just freely tell your story. Be as candid as you can, and build the human connection, because as humans, we are all looking to connect with each other. Our past history, our past experiences, our emotions are what tie us together. So get your story out there and let it be heard.
Excellent. Thank you so much, JR. And those of you watching, thank you for watching this video interview, this latest edition of Business Casual. If you are interested in being interviewed, let us know. If you would like to refer somebody, or if you would like to see a particular person or a particular industry featured, let us know. You can find us online. You can send us an email or a message. We would love to connect with you. And hopefully, what JR said, have that human to human connection moving forward. Thanks, JR. Have a great night.
Thank you for having me.